Good morning. You are not wrong. This is not the correct audio, but it's raining and I'm not re-recording the intro. So here we are. We're going to make this knitting pattern for this tiny Easter bunny. It's really easy. He's knit flat. He just needs 3.5mm knitting needles, DK yarn, a couple of safety eyes, and some stuffing. So any moment now, you're going to be able to have your own mini Easter bunny. He's very sweet. And he even has this adorable little tail, which I have not managed to film very well in this shot at all. What we're going to need is some double knit yarn. I'm using this Flight Naturals Merino from Skeins. It's left over from a baby blanket project, and some 3.5mm straight knitting needles. They don't need to be double pointed. I just prefer them to be double pointed. First thing we're going to do is the legs. So what we need to do is to cast on 8 stitches, and now we're going to knit 6 rows. So I'm going to do this and then come back to you. So here we have it. Here's our first leg. It's just the 6 rows and 8 stitches across. What I'm now going to do on this needle is I'm going to cast on another 8 stitches and knit another 6 rows separately now that we've cut the yarn from here. So here we have our 2 legs next to each other, and what we're going to be doing is knitting them across as though it's one row that they're joined together. Now this stitch here is a bit of a pain to get started with, but it'll be fine in the long run. What this here is that there's a centre seam up the back of the bunny. So the bunny itself at this point is this wide with his legs, and his legs fold around. So we're going to have some increases coming in here that give him those cute little hips. So that's what we're going to do now. This row here, we are going to knit 3, then we're going to knit into the front and back of this next stitch. Then we're going to make 1, then we're going to knit 7 right across this join. Then we're going to knit front and back, make 1 here, and then knit 3 right there at the end. So we'll start by knitting 3. Then what we're going to do is we're going to knit into the front loop of the stitch, come around the back of it, and knit in the back of the stitch as well. That's going to give us an increase of 1, and it's going to give us an increase of 1 on this side here, bringing out the hip. We're now going to make 1 by picking up this little bridge. This can be a bit tricky sometimes. And we're going to knit that bridge, which creates another stitch, but this coming out the other side. And now we're going to knit 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is where it gets a little bit more challenging, but you'll be fine. 5, 6, 7. Now this one here is going to try and loosen itself up because it's not like crochet where everything's hooked neatly together. But what we now have is we've knitted across this gap, and we'll just keep tugging on these yarn ends every now and again just to make sure they're fine. Now what we're going to do is we are going to knit into the front and back of this stitch, just making sure it's not a make 1, which gives us a sticky out at the hip. Then we're going to pick up this bit there, picking up the bridge and trying to film it on camera. Never the easiest task for me, but that gives us another stitch increased. Now we're just going to knit the last 4. Now there are 3 increases of the hips, and they all include and happen at the same point in the legs. So this next row we're just going to purl across. So I'll purl across and then I'll rejoin you. Right, so now we're up to the 3rd row of the body, and what we're going to do here is we're going to knit 4 at the very start of the row. 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to knit front and back of this stitch here, increasing by 1. Then we're going to pick up our bridge, and we're going to attempt to do this seamlessly without embarrassing ourselves on camera. make 1, and now we're going to knit 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we're going to knit front and back in this stitch. Now we're going to pick up the bridge. We're going to pick up the bridge. Yeah. And then we're going to knit the bridge. And then we're going to knit 5. Just before, the next row is a straight purl, so I'll just purl across it and then I'll meet you back for the last row of his hips. Right, so this is the next and last row increasing for the hips of our bunny. So what we're going to do here is we're going to knit 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you know the drill. We're going to knit front and back into this stitch here. Then we're going to pick up the bridge seamlessly and act like we've done this 1,000 times in our life before. There we go. I probably didn't even catch that on film. It was so good. So we've made 1. Now we're going to knit 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now we knit front and back. We pick up our bridge. We knit that to make 1. And now we knit 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as you can see, we've got his hips popping out here, or her hips. We don't define the gender of our Easter bunny. So what we're going to do is we're just going to now purl the next row, knit the next row, purl the next row, and then I will rejoin you as we start to decrease for his shoulders. So that's a purl row, a knit row, and a purl row. All right, so I've just completed those 3 rows, and now we're up to a decrease to go down into his little slopey shoulders of adorableness. So what we're going to do here is we are going to knit 5. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to knit 2 together, and when we knit 2 together, that pulls the stitches over this way. Now our next ones are going to be just a slip, slip, knit. Now if you're new to knitting, I will have an easy version of the bunny, and you can either choose to just do the hip shaping with knitting 2 together, or you can do the version without hips. But I do think that this works quite nicely with the knit 2 together and the slip, slip, knit, because it just brings the shoulders in at the right sides. Now we're going to knit 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to knit 2 together. Then we're going to SSK, or slip, slip, knit. And that's going to pull the stitches in that other direction. So see, we're starting to get his hip shape coming through. And now we're just going to knit the last 5 on the row. This will leave us with 24 stitches on our needles. If you want to have a count, you're welcome to do that. So the next 3 rows are just a purl, a knit, and a purl. So I'll do those and I will rejoin you, and then we'll do the next decrease. Right, that's our 3 rows completed. So we're now up to our next decrease, which is very similar to the last one. So what we're going to do here is we are going to knit 4, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to knit 2 together. Then we're going to slip, slip through the loops, knit 2 together. Then we're going to knit 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to knit 2 together. Then we're going to slip, slip, knit. And then we're going to knit the last 4. As you can well imagine, we now have a bit more shape coming through. Oh, isn't that adorable? Yes, it is, yes, it is, yes, it is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to purl, we're going to knit, and we're going to purl, so that's 3 more rows. I'll do those and rejoin you for our next decrease. At the moment, we're on 20 stitches. Right, so very similar to the last decrease row, because we've just done our purl and knit purl rows. Now we're going to knit 3, 2, 3. Then we're going to knit 2 together. Then we're going to slip, slip, knit. Then we are going to knit 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we're knitting 2 together. And then we're slip, slip, knitting. And then we're knitting 3. I know what you're thinking. I'm about to do 3 rows. I'm not. All I'm going to do at this point, now that we're down to 16 stitches on our needles, is we're going to purl across this row, and then I'll rejoin you for our final decrease before we get up to the neck and the head, where things do get a little bit trickier, but don't worry, you'll be fine. So I talked a big talk about rejoining you at this point and saying that it's a bit harder. But then it turns out that what I managed to do was not film anything useful, but just my purl rows while watching Law and Order SVU catch-ups. So it's all kind of useless. However, it's not as hard as I was trying to make out. What ends up happening here is that you've got a row of yarn overs, which increase for the head size. And then after that, you've got some increases for the size of the head. Now, some of these increases feel like they're a little bit out of place, but that's because what they're doing is they're increasing out the front of the bunny and the bunny's nose. If you follow along with the written instructions, you'll be absolutely fine. It's not difficult. It's just not. But I was hoping that I would have a... I thought I'd done really well filming this, and then I nearly didn't post this video, but I did want to release this bunny, and you know, it's one of those things. However, the increases, it's not going to be anywhere near as bad as you think it's going to be. So don't stress about it. Just follow the written instructions. Then what you're going to have before you know it is you're going to have all these pieces. So here's the finished body shape. It's curled up a bit because it's stockinette stitch. We've got 2 ears and we've got 2 arms. Those I didn't even bother filming at all because they're just basically knit straight. And then there's a decrease in the last row before threading everything together. A sharp sewing needle is what you want, not just a darning needle. And then some safety eyes, a pair of scissors, and you've got everything you need to put it together. This is a fork. Now, the reason why I have a fork is that, well, I like... This is Macheet's way of doing tiny pom-poms. I'm sure you've all seen this, probably on a 5-minute crafts video, let's be completely honest. But basically, you just wrap the yarn around the tines of your fork. It's just a really good excuse for me to use the word tines, to be honest. You just trim it off, and then you cut a little piece of yarn to wrap around the centre. It's at this point that you usually do something dumb like drop the fork. And then you have to start all over again from scratch. You just thread it through that middle tine, which, you know, some days easy, some days less easy. I just wrap it around a couple of times so that I can pull it tight. I mean, this is obviously not going to be a pom-pom that's anywhere near as neat as if you cut the little circles and if you're going to use a little pom-pom maker, but I can't find my small pom-pom maker, and I don't actually think my small pom-pom maker is small enough for this bunny's tail. But there we go, we've tied the little knot around there. Yeah, isn't it lovely? Looks more like a bow at this point, which, you know, kind of cute. And then you just trim the sides, just like yay. Very exciting. This is quality content. I'm not even sure why I'm leaving this at real time. This definitely could have been sped up. Yep. Now, I'm still trying to work on my tutorial filming setup. I used to have a really good one, but I don't anymore. In the future, I will figure out how to do it. I used to have this really cool magnetic tripod. It was handy for a lot of things. Anyway, here where we've got our decreases on either side of the nose bridge, because the nose pops out, we're going to put in our eyes. Now, all I would recommend is put your eyes in this first row of decreases, just above where the nose is done. Now, when you're putting your eyes in, put them in, and then take a little step back. Not a full step back, because obviously this is a tiny bunny, but just hold it back and just have a look for yourself. Are they straight? When you think they're straight, pop the little backs on. Yes, I'm popping the backs on backwards, because since watching Kylie from Complicated Knots put the backs on backwards, I tend to like popping the backs on backwards. I think I'm just copying her because she's great. You can pop them on any way you like. To be fair, with these particular eyes, I probably should have popped them on forwards. But also the other thing I should have done with these ones is trim off the edges, because they're really long posts on these ones, and the bunny's head is not that big. But I didn't, because I didn't think about it until it was too late. Anyway, once we've got the eyes in, I went for these ones with the amber outsides. I normally just use the plain black ones, but I thought the amber ones would be kind of cute. Is we're going to thread our needle, and we're just going to stitch up our bunny. Here we're going to stitch up the bunny across, using this yarn tail from the foot. We're just going to stitch across the bottom of the foot. Again, why am I leaving this in real time? Who knows? Mostly because I thought, oh, I'll be able to have some fascinating voiceover. I don't really have any fascinating voiceover for watching the sewing up of a foot, to be honest. Anyway, here's the sewing up of the bottom of a foot, and I just go across the little stitches there from the cast on edge. Yep, and then I try not to stab myself in the thumb. Successfully didn't stab myself in the thumb there. And then just thread across back to the inseam. Now we're going to stitch up the inseam. Now this is still only a couple of rows. Like, remember, our legs were only about 8 rows long, so it's not going to take very long to do this. Just tuck in your yarn tails, hold it tight at this point. You can do like a really nice mattress stitch or that sort of thing, but I find that a whip stitch works well. We're on the inside of the leg. I don't think anyone's actually going to ever look inside the leg of your Easter bunny, but you never know. You do you, boo. When we get to that top of the inseam, we're just going to put in about 2 extra stitches just to reinforce it there at the crotch. Did anyone ever want to hear me say crotch on the internet? No, nobody ever did, but that's okay. It's just the situation that we're now in. So when you've done your first leg, you'll never guess, we're going to do the second leg. Doing the second leg is very similar to doing the first leg. We're basically just going to fold it in half, and we're going to thread up our yarn tail, and you'll start seeing his body shape coming together a little bit better. So we're just going to go through these cast on stitch edge. Now I always use a cable cast on. Some people use the what's that cool one, but the long tail. There's a whole stack of interesting bind-ons and bind-offs. I just use a cable cast on. It's the one that I find that just works nicely. It's got a bit of stretch to it. It looks pretty. Yeah. I'm not very good at doing the long tail cast on, to be honest. I should practice it. Anyway, so here we are. We've gone across the bottom of the foot, and we're going to go up his tiny little leg in the inseam yet again. So, yeah, there's nothing overly exciting at this point. We're going to go up his little leg. When we get to the top of the leg, we'll throw in a few more stitches, and then we're going to see that you're going to twist him sideways. When we twist him sideways, what we're going to do is we're going to stitch up the first part of his backbone, or his spine. Now,
the reason for doing that rather than leaving it all as a whole for stuffing is that I find this little bit here is actually the trickiest bit to get right. So you just take your time, you pull your yarn tails out of the way, make sure that you've got your knitted fabric as flat as you can, because with stockinette stitch it does roll and it's annoying. So just going through those stitches, having some mindfulness activity, thinking this is what I'm doing for my mindfulness today. I'm doing tiny stitches. Yes, I am. Again, I just do a whip stitch because I find the whip stitch works best. Um, Here we go, we're picking it up and we're going through the stitches. And then when you get to about 4 or 5 stitches up, just go through the same one twice so that you've got it a little bit more secure at the bottom of his bum bum. Then we're going to go to the top, and when we do the top, we're going to do the very same thing. We're going to thread our needle, we're going to pull the top really flat so that we can stitch in and around and down the top of his head. Yeah, well, you'll be pleased to know that I've sped stuff up here anyway. So we're just going to go from the top of the bunny's head using our whip stitches again. Again, you can use any stitch you like. I just like a whip stitch. And in fast speed, I enjoy watching a whip stitch, just to be honest. So what we're doing here is we're just going down the top of his head, and you'll be able to see his little acorny type head shape. And we're going to stop at this neck. When you get to the neck hole, you'll know that there's a row of holes there, which we're going to use for threading up later. Then we're going to stuff him. You don't want to overstuff him, but you don't want to understuff him. Once he's stuffed, we're going around through the neck and we're going in and out through those little holes, and then we're pulling it tight and going around his neck a few times. Now I'm just putting in a few stitches by going between the eye stalks. So you sort of get under there, go in as close to where you can to where the eyes in the fabric, and just throw some stitches to pull the eyes closer together. It just makes them look a little bit cuter. There we go. Yeah. See, it's at this point where I think that using the amber ones, terrible idea. They do look kind of pretty, but they do make it look like the eyes aren't sitting in very neatly, but that's fine. It's really fine. They're not coming out. They are in quite securely. I just probably should have gone with the plain black ones, but you make decisions and you run with it. We're now going to stitch on his little nose. So at this point, give it a squeeze. We're just going to go across a couple of times, and we're going to make a little upside down triangle with the point pointing towards the bottom. As you can see, I've got many skills in this regard. No, I don't. This is just me going backwards and forwards until we get a triangle shape. Now, this triangle shape doesn't really matter too much. We're just making a wee nose, and then I'm giving his little nose a little bit of a mouth shape there at the bottom. Again, you can just leave it straight as a triangle, but I thought I'm going to be really fancy, and I'm just going to give him a little serious face. Was I aiming for a serious face? Yeah, I actually think I was aiming for a serious face. I think all the bunnies are fairly serious around here since we've got a dog, but there we go. And then we're just going to make it go away, and we're going to trim off our end there. Yes, isn't he adorable? Now we're going to stick on the arms and the ears. Which one did I pick up first? We will never know. Well, we're going to know in just a second. I'd like to say I've got the arms. I could be wrong. There's me threading the needle. Not necessarily threading the needle very well, but we're threading the needle. So at this point, all we're going to do is to go down the side of the arm. So pull your arm flat, just like we did with the back, and then we're just going to stitch up the side. Oh, that is quite fast. That is quite fast indeed. And we're going to stuff them, and then we're going to stuff the arms and stick them to the sides, and then we're going to stick the ears to the top. And there we have it. That's our tiny bunny. Did I speed through? This is a little bum bum tail. He's very cute. He's very easy. You can do this.